in letters, I don't know if you got into letter 6 yet, but this idea of evolution being like on the horizontal plane under the guise of the serpent. That was
Uh,
very interesting to me because um I can remember when I was raised Pentecostal, and I can remember when I was going through my catechism when I was converting to Catholicism, I still like had some misgivings about evolution. And I thought, and I made
I
this
do.
argument to my priest about how you really can't, if evolution is absolutely true without any qualification, there's no resolution to the problem of evil possible, because you can't really, there's no way of dealing with the physical evil.
yeah.
So I thought the way that Tomberg talks about evolution as being this groping trial of the serpent offers a way to do that.
I tend to, like the way that I presented before and the way I present it now is that I think natural selection is a pattern in the world. It's a true pattern, and it's a pattern that can help you understand things. But I think the narrative evolution is just useless and not interesting, and it doesn't help you do anything. Like it has to be. It always ends up having to be represented mythologically, despite the scientists pretending that it's not.
This
And
is
it's
kind
a
of what
bad
Tomberg
mythology.
says too, though, because he says it's a fact, right? So it's a fact on the horizontal plane. It's a fact, but it's a fact only. It's a fact only on the horizontal plane, and that it's guide, and that because it's on the horizontal plane, its origin is the serpent.
But I think Tomberg was a man of his time, and that was the language that was the language of evolution, which was appropriated by Blavatsky, and the early Steiner also picked up on it, and they were speaking in these kinds of terms. Now it's spiritual evolution, right? Now my friend Guido Preparata, he's a blunt and funny guy, and he thinks Darwin's whole project was just a project to prove British imperialism. It was social what we call social Darwinism.
Right.
Darwinism now. Yeah, that's what it is. See, the survival of the fittest. The British are the fittest. End of story. Right. So I don't buy it. I mean, personally, I don't know what to think of the evolution narrative. I mean, I'm sure things do. I'm a farmer. I know how things work, but of course, we have a society that believes in evolution but doesn't believe in gender. I can't figure it out.
Well, what's really
well,
interesting,
it's also the thing. The whole evolution narrative is it's just so hilarious, because the evolution narrative ends up being teleological. They can't avoid it. Every time they try to make it non-teleological, they fail.
Mm-hmm.
So it always ends up having to be teleological, and so then it becomes non-scientific immediately. It just becomes a kind of a mythological pattern, and it's like, well, if it's a mythological story, my mythological story is much better. Like the creation narrative in Genesis accounts way in a better manner for the ontological hierarchy of your experience of the world than the way that evolution talks about reality. And you can see, like, I mean, when I talked about Weinstein, it's always the same issue. And you see the same with all the evolutionary theorists. They're basically saying what evolution really wants you to do is to basically kill and compete and take and just get your seed out there, get your genes to the next generation. But of course we shouldn't do that.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, where do you get the we shouldn't do that from?
Yeah.
That's actually what interests me, because that's a lot closer to what I care about. And then maybe you can find that in the Genesis story, but the other, you can't find it anywhere else in your little pattern, like in your little worldview.
Well, who believes in the evolution story? The World Economic Forum. Yeah. And guess who's at the top of that food chain? But it's interesting because you think about, you mentioned Genesis. Genesis is the opposite of the evolution. It's the fall.
Yeah.
Right? It goes in the opposite direction.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right, but you can understand. You can understand. It's so much closer to even to the way that evolutionists think of their teleological project, because there is a hierarchy of being. If you read Saint Ephrem, it's beautiful. Like Saint Ephrem says he says things like the animals did not come into the garden, right? And so the animals would come to the foot of the garden, then Adam would come down the mountain. and he would like encounter them, and that's when he named them and everything. So there's this sense in which like the type of ontological hierarchy that they tried to create in their evolutionary system, it's there in the more traditional narrative, and it actually accounts for morality and responsibility and all this stuff that we actually think even now, even all these weird environmentalists, like super environmentalists, they believe in what Genesis says. Like they believe that we're the gardeners and we should take care of creation and that we shouldn't abuse it. And it's like, if you're really like just an evolutionist, I don't know if you could really believe any of those things.
I agree. Well, that's what happened with, and I think that's explains Tomberg's attraction for Teilhard de Chardin, right?
Yeah,
because that's evolution taken into Catholic theology.
Yeah, I haven't gotten there, and so maybe I'll definitely have my beef with him when he gets to Teilhard de Chardin. I don't know yet.
Well, I don't know if you read Teilhard. I mean, he's a beautiful writer. He really he writes like a poet.
Yeah,
and it's beautiful writing, and he has a lot of brilliant insights. I think the complete project. I don't have to agree with people about everything that they'd say.
Yeah, of course, you're right. You're totally right.
Like them. I'm cool with the parts I like. You know, I don't have to be all in.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. That's how I approach pretty much everything. Like I don't have to defend everything that this person that I slightly associated with says.
I don't agree with everything my wife says. So. Well, what about some guy I never met, right? You're gonna tag me with everything he ever thought or believed.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't tell her that.
He says, "Don't tell her that." I'm sure she knows.
Yeah, she knows. Trust me.
She says.
Yeah, she knows.